Welcome back to POV, your favorite political commentary show. Now, we took a short break, but we're back, and we're back with a bang, because now we're going to be examining visions for this country's future. Let's get it. Let's face facts, people. Things are not okay right now, and our ability to wing it and be resilient is reaching its limit. I mean, a loaf of bread and a liter of petrol are now in the same WhatsApp group. And for a small fraction of families with the means, it's now easier to get your groceries and household supplies from South Africa or Botswana than just to drive down the road to a local supermarket. And for those of you watching in the diaspora, I'm sure you've realized that it's become increasingly difficult to support your families back home because their expenses are almost the same, and in some cases, even more expensive than yours. That's because Zimbabweans have the same living expenses as New Yorkers. We just don't earn the same. In fact, since the monetary policy announcement in February, in which the RTGS dollar was devalued and promises made were broken right before our eyes, things are becoming amiss on an almost daily basis. Minimum wage in Zimbabwe, ladies and gentlemen, is $300 a year. Now, how does a country get to this point? In fact, how does a country with citizens as competent as ours get to this point? The answer is point blank and simple: leadership. So in this episode, we want to turn our attention to the leadership of old as a precursor to looking at how the present government, 245 days into its existence, can turn things around by simply not repeating the same mistakes from the past. Long-term visions and grand economic policies have long been a tool used by our government to instill hope of a brighter future. Since independence in 1980, policymakers in Zimbabwe have come up with quite impressive economic policies, some of which, had they been pursued properly, would have resulted in notable prosperity for the country and our people. Now, in the 39 years of existence, we have come up with no less than 13 economic blueprints aimed at promoting sustainable economic growth and poverty alleviation. Vision 2020. Remember those words? That was the boldest and most ambitious of all the policies. And today, being the 29th of April 2019, we should be several months away from realizing the goals put forth in that vision. But I think it's safe to say that we have a better chance of seeing Ned Stark assume the Iron Throne at this point than to see those goals realized. You see, from the period of March 2000 to the year 2020, Vision 2020 was supposed to be the basis for any short and medium-term policy announcements, and its specific targets were to double the nation's GDP per capita, to stabilize inflation to a single digit, to achieve and maintain positive real interest rates, reduction of budget deficit to manageable levels, substantial decreases in unemployment rate, and an increased investment and national savings to at least 30%. Now, to meet these targets, the following actions had to be done, and this is what the policy was trying to iron out. There had to be effective public sector resource management. In other words, government had to live within its means. We had to have industry kick-started again, because without production, there was nothing that was going to come out of it. And lastly, of course, most importantly, agriculture had to be supported in all facets. Now, is it not interesting that it's still to this day fiscal responsibility, the need to revive industry, and the continued support for the agricultural sector are still at the basis of our solutions? What are we still not getting? But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. So let's get into it. The first brainchild of Vision 2020 was the Zimbabwe Millennium Economic Recovery Program, or MERP. This policy framework covered 30 months from July 2000 up to December 2002, and its aim was to fight spiraling inflation, which was cited as a major cause of macroeconomic instability. Some of the key highlights and the promises of the policy were the monetary policy, which was aimed at reducing inflation, lowering interest rates, and reducing RBZ's lending practices to the government. So MERP failed, so something had to come next. And it did. It was later succeeded by the National Economic Recovery Plan, or NERP. This policy document was released in February 2003 and was meant to respond to a hostile external and domestic environment brought on by sanctions and vibrant opposition politics. It's very colorful. Inflation then had climbed to more than 200%, and the country was facing unprecedented foreign currency shortages. NERP was going to be a sector-led recovery scheme in which tourism, mining, agriculture, and manufacturing were to have strict policies drawn up for each to help revive their use to the economy and also bolstering their individual capacities as national assets. But NERP failed, since the prior base macroeconomic policies were not successful. Simply put, the foundation made by the previous failing was just too much to overcome for this small little economic plan. So they scrapped it and put in another one. Hence, after it came the Microeconomic Policy Framework, or MEF. MEF was about reducing inflation, and to a certain extent it worked, but it was due to the RBZ printing all the money needed to support the goals outfitted. The policy succeeded in enhancing the provision of financial support to agriculture and other key sectors, but the objectives were not met, prompting the formulation of a new short-term policy. Now, the National Economic Development Priority Program, or NEDIP, was now launched to restore the economic stability through the implementation of quick win strategies during the last half of 2006. Now, I wish I could go through the specific objectives of the policy, but the most notable was still the reduction of inflation, but then there was the image or the improvement of the national image with foreign investors and the improved mobilization of local and foreign currency. Looks like old habits die hard. However, what absolutely tickles me is the reason why NEDIP died. See, before NEDIP was implemented, the government had come up with yet another program, the Zimbabwe Economic Development Strategy, or ZEDS. So we've transitioned from like inflation to poor market forces to the environment killing programs to now at this point, programs are killing programs, which just certainly show that the government was more willing to create acronyms and documents instead of actually doing the work. Now, it was inevitable that after so many failed policies, this was going to happen. You see, ZEDS was just the repackaging of old policies. Its primary objective was to achieve sustainable, balanced, and development that was oriented towards poverty reduction. It came into effect when the country's woes were at their worst, and what killed it was a number of things. The decisions in it were politically motivated, like the fast-tracking of land reform to try and get one up on the opposition. There was also an acute shortage of basic commodities, which included maize meal, drugs, fuel, electricity, and foreign currency. You remember the days, guys. And unfortunately, at the end of September 2007, the government indefinitely postponed the launch of ZEDS. Yet again, another policy that didn't see the light of day because everything else around it was crazy. ZEDS has failed. Zimbabwe has gone into crisis. We're now in the GNU. 2 years later, with the GNU now there, we have the Short-Term Recovery Program, or STURP. And then came STURP 2. Then the Medium-Term Plan, or MTP. And then GNU finished, and we brought in the Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable Socio-Economic Transformation, or ZimAsset. I think you see where we're going with this. So Vision 2020 was NERP into MERP, into MEP, into NEDIP, into ZEDS, into STURP 1, and then STURP 2, into the MTP, and then ZimAsset, equals 23 years of nothing. And now we have the TSP, or Vision 2030, which has now pushed the dream of a greater Zimbabwe 10 years forward. And did you know that in the GNU, there was actually a proposed Vision 2040? And a few years back, Zimbabwe pledged to play their role in Agenda 2063, a continued wide pledge to make Africa a first world continent. So when will we see or live in the country we want to? Is it in 10 years? Is it in 20 years? Or is it in 43 years' time? The bottom line is, what the government of old clearly indicated was that they put more effort into the creation of acronyms and not actually in the implementation of the work that they did. Implementation, the work, getting things done, is more important than building 23,000-page articles telling us about the dreams and visions. Zimbabwe is at a point right now where rhetoric is not enough. We are tired and we need to start seeing action. So whether it's a TSP, USB, BSB, GSP, who knows? What we need right now from our new government is to learn from the actions of the old one, that no actions equals the reaction of people who are continually disappointed. Let's hope these words sink in for us, because we really need to start seeing a difference. This has been Kuda Mangwe, wishing you a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night.